users, so we can own all our own users on MySpace with a cross-site scripting worm. The real goal here is to jump to another site, right? Because we can affect 1 million users, but we want to affect everybody on the internet. Okay, so if we wanted to do that, we got to do things different. So this is where we're at right now. We'll come back to how things are different. Penetration. So if you hit a MySpace.com with the cross-site scripting worm, the MySpace worm can't just directly jump to Facebook. We can't trick MySpace into executing server-side code, right? So they can't jump to Facebook. So we need to figure out another channel. Okay, MySpace can't jump to Facebook users, right? Because it's server jumping to client. That doesn't make any sense. So that's also not possible. So we need to trick the user into going into Facebook and spreading the worm to Facebook. But because of the same origin policy, which works a lot of times and sometimes doesn't, that's not possible. I can't just fire up an XML HTTP request and start scanning and attacking Facebook. However, Billy Hoffman showed us with Jicto that we can use a third-party proxy like Google Translate to bounce and scan traffic to Facebook. Okay, so we can have a scanner through JavaScript using a third-party proxy. Okay, but this, again, is a single point of failure. So cross-site scripting worms need to be able to, if for the bad guys, cross-site scripting worms need to be able to be resistant to these centralized mechanisms, because centralization, I think I say later, is just another word for weakness in a worm. Okay, so we can't scan that third party, but we have to use, or we can't scan Facebook, we have to use that third party, so that's fine. So let's say we use that to own Facebook. We get their users. What I think is interesting and what I haven't heard a lot of people talk about is the fact that actually we can jump with the cross-site scripting worm from the outside internet to the inside internet using CSRF. Okay? So you might wonder, how come we can't use the same technique using a third-party proxy to jump to PeopleSoft.internal? Well, it's because we can't jump to that third-party proxy because the third-party proxy does not have access to your internal web applications. Okay, so the only way, thanks to the same origin policy, that we can, send attacks to internal websites is through CSRF. And given the lack of security that people tend to put into internal applications, this doesn't seem far-fetched at all. Especially when looking at internal applications that are commonly used, like Documentum and some of these other things that are just riddled with problems. So, a lot of us use the same internal apps, and it's not going to take me that long to come up with, a JavaScript that does network, tries to send Documentum attacks against all the IPs in your network range. So it is possible to jump to internal networks. We can do that island hopping, but it's only going to be through CSRF. So right now, it's kind of hard to jump across domain. We need that third-party proxy. And we can only island hop with CSRF. Okay, so it's my little burn on Tom Stracer. I meant to change that to netdev, but I didn't have time. So traits of the current worms: they're static, passive infection strategies, stay on the same domain. So there was one worm that jumped across domain. Actually, there was a couple. But the reason they were able to jump across domain is because the application took their application custom code, took that message and sent it to another domain. That's not really jumping across domain. That's not reliable. It's only going to work for one site. So this Italian worm, Nuda, or however you want to say it, that did jump across different webmail providers, but again, it was programmed to, and same origin policy wasn't the restriction. So the same origin policy was never bypassed. Uncontrolled growth and no command and control. We did see one worm attempt to perform centralized command and control, but there was a typo in the URL, so they can never go get a copy of the new worm. Okay, current incident response. I know I'm all over the place, but I'm just trying to address every different question that you could possibly have. So current incident responses. Fix the vulnerability, obviously, if you want to do a patch. If we're dealing with a cross-site scripting worm when a minute is really valuable, again, 18 hours for Sammy's site meant 1 million users. We're talking minutes. We want to get this thing done in minutes. Sometimes, it's going to take hours to get a code patch through. Maybe a WAF is a good idea just for this reason. I'm not all about WAFs for everything. But this is one niche it seems that they could really fill pretty easily. So if you want to have a quick fix, do it with OAuth. Okay, manual purging. So actually we worked with the client on Monday, right before I came up here, that got hit with a cross-site scripting attack, and they were trying to manually purge their database. It was really coincidental. I'd already built these slides and everything. It's just, it's very affirming to me that this happened. So they were trying to go through with 10 developers to go through their database and try to find all the instances of the cross-site scripting attack. So they had failed because there were a lot of things that they weren't looking at. It just doesn't scale, especially for a big site. So you could also try to revert your database to a snapshot before the cross-site scripting worm ever got there. But the problem with that is you lose all those other application changes, right? So you're not just reverting all the attack data, you're reverting everything that user or all your users has done in the last day. Search and destroy. Search and destroy kind of works now. So like Sammy's and everybody's all their attack payloads were exactly the same. So it's really easy to signature because it's exactly the same. So you can just do a for loop through the database and clean it out. So this is tricky, but possible if the attackers take the right approach. And we'll get more into that. Okay, the future. So we're going to go through the 5 components of the cross-site scripting worm and see how things can be different. Okay? Okay, so reconnaissance. This is about finding new network nodes to attack. And like I pointed out in my picture with the innocent girl in MySpace, with the traditional cross-site scripting worm, the girl is not actually involved in the attack very much. She just forwards an attack from MySpace onto MySpace. Okay? So how can we actually get the user to find new places to send the vulnerability or send the XSS attack? Okay, well, thanks to all the feature wars that are going on right now, we have a lot of options. So Google Gear's worker pool is a set of threads that you can use to kick off any kind of JavaScript in the background of an application. So we can actually run client-side code behind your browser kind of that you don't even know about. So Google Gear's thread will live past when you navigate away from the page. So as long as your browser is open, we can kick off a scanner if we infect you with a cross-site scripting attack that will just live on until you close your browser. And sure, sometimes you're going to close your browser right away, but for as many people that do that, there are also going to be as many people that just leave it open, sometimes for days, especially with you Mac people, right? Because your Firefox is always alive, right? Okay, so it could be on for weeks, months even. Okay, HTML5 workers are, HTML5 is actually going to implement something that's exactly like Google Gear's worker pool. Okay, so we have that option, and then whatever tomorrow's new RIA is going to be. You can also do this with Flash. I mean, there's just an unlimited amount of possibilities of how you can execute client-side code without them knowing about it. So what are we going to do in this code, in this thread, with this worker? We're going to be using this worker to go scan for more domains to infect. Okay, but what about the same origin policy? So the old and busted way to do it, I don't actually mean it's old and busted, right? It's actually still pretty cool, is to use Jicto or some technique like that with a third-party proxy. What what attackers should be doing now? They should be using malware, because malware changes everything. You can do anything you want with malware. But next generation hotness. Okay, so how are we going to jump into this next generation? How are we going to scan other sites or try to infect other sites? Okay, well, if you didn't know,